So I went to Sheffield play yesterday, and I have a lot of thoughts, and they're not really very cohesive. I'm gonna say them all now and then cut them down into something that hopefully makes more sense and might be useful for me as well when I watch it back. So overall, it was pretty underwhelming. To set the scene, it was a mad scramble to get as much of the game done as possible so there's something to play, and I got the main story done up to the first sort of real beat where the loop would start happening. I did the cutscenes, I was getting it finished, and I was, to the wire, getting the build out and getting around some Mac permissions that were like, an unexpected last hurdle. But it didn't matter because nobody cared about the story. Nobody that played it was bothered about reading the introduction lore bit at the start or reading the dialogues in the cutscenes. And I get it. And thinking about it, I think I know why. I've come at game development from a perspective of I really enjoy D&D, and I want to try and bring some of that to a game. And that is very lore heavy and very descriptive of the environment. As a DM, you're sat there with a captive audience while you set the scene and tell them what's happening and then hand it over to them to do something with it. In a game, that doesn't seem to translate the same at all. And it sounds obvious now that I've seen it firsthand, but it wasn't how I was thinking about it before. The first bit is, you're sat at a table in a tavern, there is dialogue to read. And that sets the scene, it tells you the starting quest, it introduces the characters, fine. People don't want to read that. You need to get it into the game sooner. Second point that links into that, I need a tutorial to explain all the guff that's there. So I think linking points 1 and 2 is to have a tutorial of some sort that delivers the lore more slowly, but also gets you into the action faster. And by that I mean into combat. So you're doing the main combat scene first, and then outside of that you'll get some story delivered. But yeah, tutorial is required because I know the game. I handle it all the time, so I know everything. I know where things are and how to do them. If you're coming at fresh, you know none of that, and that makes real sense. And I always knew I needed a tutorial, but now I realise how much I need a tutorial. And given that it's going to be part of the story, it's not just going to be entirely in isolation, it needs to be part of the story. That's more important than ever, because that's the first impression people get of the game then, is how to do it and what that's going to tell you about the setup of the world and the game after that. Third main point was combat is too slow. I need to figure out a way to make it slicker and quicker. Enemies can play cards the same as you can play cards, so they get a dealt a hand of cards, they randomly pick and play based on their energy and mana limits, and that's how it goes. But that's slow. So one suggestion was to make enemies play fewer cards. I thought maybe we can reduce their health, so combat is quicker just by virtue of you get through them faster. But also a big thing was that combat was taking a long time because I initially built the game with a party of 4 in mind. Now that I'm getting up to where I thought I was going to be for a demo, I've dropped 2 of the characters to start with, and I was going to put in quests so you can unlock them later. And I dialed stats of all the starting area enemies to try and compensate for that. But you can still, at the start, be 2 characters against 4 enemies. So they take a long time taking all their actions, but also there's loads of them. They've got bigger health than I thought, so it's difficult. Of the people that played it, only 1 of them made it through a combat. I need to dial down all the starting area enemies so it's just a bit easier. With the gameplay loop as it is, when you scale up and you get towards higher power levels, fine. There'll be negligible combat, but that's fine, I guess. It's more of a problem if they're blocking people at the start than if they're a problem for later. I guess the positive that I took away from it was that, or the main positive rather, was that people like the art style. They like how I've sort of put together people and the environments and the way it looks in the pixel art style I've done. So that's nice, because obviously how it looks is important, and it's something I've spent a lot of time on. I mean, I spent time on all of it, but that people like the aesthetic is pleasing. I guess on the whole, I was feeling pretty grumpy yesterday. Like, taking feedback is hard. I'm really trying to just see the positives. And I've got a load of tasks written up for things I need to now change and do to make the game more fun and better. But it has taken the wind out of my sails somewhat. But that's fine. I think it's a reality check. So I need to have another swing at it. I need to address those really obvious points of things that were wrong. Or not wrong, but things that just weren't fun enough. And then hopefully, once I've got a bit more of a handle on that, I can return to crafting the story and making that something that's worth playing. So yeah, back to it.